All right. I'm sure some others will be joining us, but we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to be respectful of your time. Good morning and welcome to the Tennessee Post-Secondary Outcomes Indicator 14 webinar. Before we're going to dive into today's session, I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself and my colleagues who are supporting this work with the department. I'm Catherine Bledsoe and serve as the Manager of Special Education Post-Secondary Transition at Tennessee Department of Education. I also have with me Melissa and Rachel from East Tennessee University or East Tennessee State University, and Hillary Travers from Vanderbilt University joining today's call. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rachel and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Tossi. This is Melissa Conda. We have been at ETSU. We've had this contract for over 25 years. We also do Indicator 8 and Tennessee Early Intervention Systems Indicator for the HOPE survey. A lot of people have been with us for the last few years, so make sure you know whether you're with ETSU or whether you're with Vanderbilt. And if you need anything, just email us. We're happy to be here. Okay.
All right, Hillary, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Hillary Travers. I'm a research assistant professor at Vanderbilt, and I lead the work of Transition Tennessee, which you might be familiar with. We are new to the Indicator 14 work starting this year, but we look forward to working with you and, developing those partnerships and continuing with you in future years.
Perfect. And I just want to make sure, can everyone see the presentation?
I have not shared it yet.
Oh, perfect.
I'll do that right now.
All right. So at the end of today's call, we are going to make sure to provide you with our contact details. If you've not received those yet, we're going to make sure that you leave with those so you know how to contact us, whether depending on which university you're working with or myself. And should you have further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and get in touch with us. Indicator 14 data collection is a fundamental component of special education. And so this data really provides invaluable insights into the post-school outcomes for students with disabilities. Today, we're going to discuss the significance behind that, the process of navigating the survey, strategies for enhancing the response rates, and a new procedure for obtaining a Indicator 14 stipend for your district. Starting in 2024, every LEA in Tennessee, as you all are aware, are going to undertake the task of gathering Indicator 14 data. So this annual data collection initiative really does serve as a vital tool that's going to benefit all stakeholders across our state. It's going to allow us to enable LEAs to evaluate the progress of our students transitioning from their high school years to adulthood. Through this systematic tracking of outcomes over time, LEAs can then really pinpoint emerging trends that they're seeing and introduce targeted interventions aimed at enhancing outcomes for these students as they navigate from that journey into adulthood as they're leaving us. Consistent and systematic data collaboration and efforts, we know, always serve as a catalyst. And so we want to make sure that through that, we are fostering collaboration among all of our stakeholders involved in the education of our students with disabilities. So by looking at this data, we hope to gain the ability to discern those patterns and trends, offer critical insights that are going to inform our instructional practices, and customize our service delivery to the unique needs of our students. And we know that varies district to district and by regions. Furthermore, this wealth of data that we're going to now have as a representation of a larger group that's going to show us what all of our students are doing statewide presents a valuable opportunity for us to engage with families and the community members, fostering that transparency and trust through that shared understanding and collaboration of ultimately our goal for all of our community members. Here at the department, making sure students with disabilities do well after high school isn't something that we believe that school should have to do. It's something that, we believe everyone in society should really care about. And so by dedicating resources and intention to this endeavor, educators are going to empower students to unlock that full potential. We want to make meaningful contributions to society and really want to make sure that we're charting that way for a brighter future for our students and ultimately our communities. So through our collaborative efforts with East Tennessee State University, Vanderbilt University, and the Department of Education, we are hoping to pave this way for that inclusive, equitable, and thriving communities where every individual in your district is going to have the opportunity to thrive in their next step, whatever that may be for that individual. And so before diving into the data collection process, we just want to make sure that you all have all the necessary prerequisites in place first as we walk you through how to complete these surveys so that we can really facilitate a smooth collection process. And so the first thing is your student list with contact information and unique IDs. Make sure that you have that comprehensive list of students participating in the survey, along with their contact information, such as their phone numbers, emails, address. Additionally, each student should have been assigned a unique ID, which you should have received either from ETSU or from Vanderbilt. An electronic device. So make sure you have access to an electronic device such as a laptop or a tablet. This is going to be used for administering the survey electronically or for entering data collected from the paper surveys. A copy of the paper survey. So it's essential to always keep one of these physical copies on hand, even if you plan to administer it electronically. This is going to serve as your backup in case of technical issues or for situations where electronic administration is not feasible. And then remove distractions. We know that this can be so challenging in a lot of our environments, but we want to make sure that we are creating an environment that's conducive to focused data collection by removing those distractions as much as possible, finding a quiet and comfortable space where you can concentrate on that task, but also so that individual that you're making contact with is able to easily understand you, hear you, and feel like they're having that conversation with just you. Sufficient time. Allocating enough time for the data collection process, rushing through the survey administration can often lead to errors or incomplete responses. So try to plan ahead and schedule enough time to thoroughly collect the data required from each participant. So by ensuring that you have these prerequisites in place, it's going to be a much smoother and more prepared environment to be able to collect the survey data efficiently and effectively. I'm now going to turn it over to Hillary from Vanderbilt University to walk you through completing the survey.
Great. So I'll start by just saying, if you have been part of the Indicator 14 collection in years past with ETSU, the procedures this year are almost exactly the same. So this will hopefully feel familiar, but if you're new to this, then I'm going to walk you through this process, and we'll have time for questions at the end if there are any, and I anticipate there may be some. So the first thing to just note, as Catherine mentioned, you should have received a student list from ETSU or Vanderbilt on April 15th. So if this does not ring a bell, please let us know, but check your email and make sure you've received this list. I believe there were 5 or 6 attachments as well, but one of them would have been a list of your students and their contact information. The important thing on this list is that each student has a unique ID. This unique ID is not their state ID or a school ID. It is an ID that ETSU or we at Vanderbilt have created for that student for Indicator 14 analysis. So it's important you use that number, not a number that is somehow attached to the student through their IEP or their student files. Also part of that email on April 15th, one of those attachments was a paper copy of the survey. Tara, my colleague, is going to drop a link to that in the chat so that you have access if you need it again. But the important thing is just to know, if you prefer a paper copy and that works better for you and your team to complete the data collection, that is perfectly fine. All you need to know is that eventually it will have to be logged into our electronic database. We do not collect paper copies. So if you have someone use the paper copies, no problem. You can go through each question with a student on the phone, make notes. I know sometimes I find that easier. The recommendation, though, is that if you are going to use the paper copy, if you're going to go with that route, have one person collect all the paper copies and then log them electronically at the end. The reason for this is that in the electronic database, once you submit a student survey, you don't get confirmation back about which students you've entered and which you have not. And it's very easy to duplicate students. And so we'd like to try to avoid that. It's not the end of the world, but as much as possible, if you have one person log all students, there's less likely that chance of two people pulling up the same piece of paper and logging information. So there are kind of 4 main steps to successful survey completion. I'm going to walk you through each of those. This is just a graphic slide, but we'll talk more in depth about each of these steps. So the first step is that you need to log into the survey electronically. So when you open a web browser, you're going to enter the survey address here. Again, we'll put this link in the chat, and I'm actually going to exit our PowerPoint now so that we can look at it together and you can see what this will look like. So let me go ahead and share my window. Okay, so that link, I know it doesn't look the same up in the link bar, it just kind of changed it, but that is the correct link that we just showed you. And this is the page that you're going to get to. Essentially, this is the only new part this year. Your only responsibility is to either type in your district name or to scroll in this dropdown. And then we'll go from there. So let's say that you are in Unicoi County. You can start typing. You want to be careful that I'm typing the right one. You know, there's Union County, Unicoi County. Be careful, make sure you're clicking the right one. But when you do select your school, something will automatically populate, and it's a link that will associate your data with either Vanderbilt or ETSU. So in this example, Unicoi County Schools is with Vanderbilt, and so that is what automatically populates. But if instead we type Knox County Schools, you'll notice it's a different link and they are with ETSU and it says it's such. So you don't need to stress too much about remembering which university you're with, whether it's ETSU or Vanderbilt. This will pre-populate it for you. We know that this is correct, we've checked it. So the email should have come from the correct person. This will again highlight who that correct survey distributor is. And when you click on the link, we'll just use this one. This is ETSU's link, but they do look identical. Then it should look familiar. Again, if you've done this process, it's the same as before. If you are new to the process, that's no problem. So we're going to talk through this form and the rest of the survey, but just again, as a reminder, you're typing and or scrolling through the dropdown, just be careful that you're really selecting your district and it will auto-populate the survey. And I'll click this just so you see. It's basically the exact same as ETSU one. So that's why we just want to be careful on the front end to select your district because then everything will look the same. Let me go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. So once you have your paper copy or your electronic copy, whatever you think you're going to use, it's time to contact the student. There are 4 different ways you can contact the student that we log. However, I personally feel that phone call is probably going to be your easiest avenue. If you're in a small community and you're having trouble reaching a student and you know maybe they work at a local grocery store or a local business and you know that you can maybe pop in to see them, of course you can go in person. But phone call is probably going to be your best avenue. In person is an option. Snail mail, through the postage, that's fine. And then email is another option. And you just want to consider which option makes the most sense for you, your school, and your community. So once you have contacted a student, this is that homepage that we kind of just got a glimpse of. So you had that original page where you selected your district, it populated the ETSU or Vanderbilt link, you click that link, and this is what populates. For every student, every time you contact them, this is what you're going to have to fill out. The first box is going to ask for that 6-digit unique ID. You're going to select the district again. This is just to make sure we're doubling down that we have the right students in the right districts. The student's last name, your name as the person who was pulling this information and interviewing the student. And then this last box here about student contact or survey submission. And I'm going to walk you through what each of those options means. That's the only one where it might alternate, but the other boxes about ID, district, student's last name, and your name will be the same every time. So let's say that you try to contact a student and it is unsuccessful. Maybe they're not home, Maybe you get an answering machine. Maybe it's an, it just keeps ringing, it never picks up, or the number is no longer available. That is when you're going to click on this top option, student contact. It just means you attempted to contact the student. And when you click that button, you will get an automatic pre-population of this message that asks you end the survey. And it's basically just saying that you have selected an option that will trigger this entire survey to end. And that's right? We're not logging any other student information. You were not able to actually get any information about their post-school outcomes. So you will click end the survey now. And that's all you have to do. And you would do that every time you contact a student. So let's say I call a student on Monday at 10 a.m., the phone rings forever, I don't get any answer. I fill out this homepage and hit end the survey now. I call again on Wednesday, maybe after work hours, thinking maybe I'll get the student then. And I get mom and I leave a message to say, please have your son call me back. Here's our information. I do the survey again, hit end the survey now. I call a third time, maybe on the weekend, and I'm able to contact the student. So this is going to be a different situation. I fill out that same homepage that we just walked through, but now I was able to talk to the student. I have access to them to get their data. I'm going to use the option survey submission. If you would like to use that paper copy, again, you are welcome to do that. You would have the information on the paper copy. It's the exact same questions. So if you have that student on the line, you walk through the questions with them from 1 until 19. You just go through the whole survey, log their information, and then again, that one person would log all the student information on the back end. That's not a problem. Just as a reminder, we do not collect those paper copies. So there are 19 questions, like I mentioned. If you're curious about what those questions are, of course, you can go to the paper copy and look at everything in advance. I'd actually recommend you do that to get familiar with the survey and feel comfortable asking the questions. For most of the questions, there is an option of like, I don't know, or doesn't remember, and that's okay too. There are options there that's multiple choice, so you're gonna give all those options to the student. And question 19 in particular is really just an open-ended area for comments. So if there's any additional comments or concerning the survey, you would note that there. Also, let's say you talk to a student and you're on the phone and you've gotten questions 1 through 14 completed, and all of a sudden the student says, well, they're no longer a student, I apologize. This young adult says, shoot, I'm late for work, I have to go, sorry. And they hang up the phone and you're halfway through. That's okay. What you're going to do is fill out the information you did have, so 1 through 14, and you're going to submit that survey as if it was completed, knowing that it's not. And then we would ask that you try to contact that student a second time at a later date, or maybe they'll call you back if that's what you've agreed to. And the second time that you contact that student, you just pick up where you left off. So you'll fill out that home page where you have the student's unique ID, their district, their last name, your name. You're going to pick that second option again so that you can fill out more of the survey. You do not need to fill out questions 1 through 14 again, because you probably don't remember if you were using the electronic copy. Just pick up at 15 and finish those last few and hit submit. On the back end, ETSU and Vanderbilt, we are able to combine those data lines so that it looks like one continuous survey. It's not a problem. We would like to avoid that because it takes more work, but we really want complete data. So if you need to call the student at 2 separate time points, that is totally understandable. And you can use that question 19 comment box to just note that. So the first time you can say, student had to leave early, will attempt to finish data collection. And that's fine. It just leaves a note for us and for you. Okay, the last step is that while there is an electronic way of documenting contact attempts, and we talked through that when those are those unsuccessful attempts, currently, it doesn't actually allow you to give us more information about like what's happening or how you attempted to contact the student. And it might feel silly, but it's actually a requirement, because when we put this report together at around February, and we have to give this to the state and then the state to the federal government, if we have low response rates, we need to talk to the federal government and put in an improvement plan of how we want to do better. But it's hard to know how to do better if we don't know what we're currently doing. So maybe we have low response rates because districts are only using snail mail, and we realize, you know what, that's probably not very effective. We need to switch to phone calls. Or maybe you're contacting the student at the same time every day, but they're at work every day. And so we need to be more creative about when we're contacting them. So this is just a way for us on the back end. There's no penalty, of course. It's just for us to look at the data to say, how can we improve the system to make sure it works better for everybody? And if we need to provide better support to districts in the future, we can do that. We just need to know what that looks like and where there might be problems. So the Excel contact log, Tara will put in the chat again if you need a copy. There was also a copy in that email on April 15th. You are going to fill it out for every student. So if you are in a smaller district, one row might be one student, the second row is a second student. Maybe you only have 10 rows representing 10 students. If you're in a large district, you might have 100 plus rows if you have 100 plus students. It depends on the size. And so again, each row is a single student. You put their unique ID again, their first name and their last name. And then there are 3 columns for their contact attempts. We are required, and by we, I mean you all, we're required collectively to attempt at least 3 contacts. You can absolutely do more within reason, right? We don't want to be pestering people. If someone politely says, I will not fill this out, okay, we have the response, right? They have declined to participate, and that is one of the options. But 3 minimum attempts, and you're going to log how you did that. So when you look at this form, you'll see that you're going to indicate the way in which you attempted to contact, whether it was phone, in person, mail, or email, and then what was the result of that contact. So were you able to get a completed survey? Did you leave a message? Was it a non-working number? Was it a return to sender if you used the mailing option? Or did the participant decline to participate? So you'll note that those 3 contact attempts here. When your log is completed for every student, so every row is filled out, you are going to send a copy of that log to ETSU or to Vanderbilt, depending on who is your institution that you're working with this year. And again, we do not want individual Excel sheets for each student. Every student should be on one log, and then you'll just send it at the end. So realistically, I don't anticipate receiving these logs until later in the summer. If you have a small district and you get this work done quickly, that's no problem. But we are not going to be asking for this, next week. This is the kind of the final step, right? Step 4. Okay, I believe I'm going to turn things back to Catherine. We just have a little bit more information, and then we'll have time for questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Hillary, for walking us through that and trying to reduce any confusion that may occur during that survey administration. So you should have received the tips for increasing your district's response rate previously when you received all of your other documents. We will also share that document in the chat. Although we won't dive deeply into each area this morning, I did want to emphasize a couple of ways to increase your district's response rate. So of course, updating that student contact. So while teachers familiar with former students remain available in the buildings right now before summer break, leverage their connections to gather that information about students. More than likely, your teachers know where they are if they're working in the community, if they're going to school somewhere else. So really try, like I said, before summer break happens, to get that information to help, depending on who your identified team is that's going to be collecting that. Any kind of lead to a student, I know is greatly appreciated. And so with the survey transitioning to an annual schedule now, I think this is also a great opportunity that your team could start really devising a method to proactively gather that contact information for your graduating students this year to help you in the future moving forward. We've also added in the summary of performance for that student's personal contact information to be added. Our goal is that that information will be able to be exported to you all next year, so that while this doesn't currently help you this year, we're trying to set you up for success in contacting those students the following year with that information that can be pulled from there. Hopefully you've had a chance to start considering your outreach team members, utilize teachers, case managers, transition school to work staff, or instructional assistants who have those existing relationships with students and families to collect data. We are definitely in the era of spam calls. And so seeing a familiar number or hearing a familiar voice is going to increase that likelihood of a student or family responding. Also consider the time of day you're calling. While work schedules are going to differ for so many individuals, most individuals primarily work during the day. For our post-secondary students, many schools conclude in mid-May, and so students may begin summer employment, which can impact their ability to be able to answer the phone calls during the day. After you have established an outreach team, provide training for school personnel on administering the survey. Many districts have reported that they have found it helpful to designate a gatekeeper who's going to be responsible for making those final attempts to collect student data, or even going back and reviewing previous attempts so that necessary adjustments can be made. Like Hillary discussed a little while ago, maybe it's something as simple as you need to call at a different time to collect information for that student, or maybe it's been documented that they've only tried by email. So let's try that phone call method first to make those adjustments. Then utilizing community partnerships. An additional way to engage those community partnerships is to provide incentives and recognition. So encourage participation by offering rewards or I cannot talk this morning, recognition to those who update contact information and respond. Collaborating with local businesses for incentives can also benefit students and encourage that participation for the family and community members. Please just note that the administration of incentives does not involve sharing the student information with external parties, so including businesses or organizations. So it's imperative to clarify that the distribution of incentives is solely managed by you all, the LEA, and is done in a manner consistent with those established protocols for maintaining student privacy. Offer raffle entries for gift cards or other prizes even to boost that participation. And then most importantly, I think when you're working with community partners, make sure you recognize those participants in newsletters, social media, or school announcements. Again, as we move forward with Indicator 14, something you are going to see across the next year is we are really wanting to brand this work, not only for our students to understand it and our families and our educators, but really wanting to make this initiative focused within our community members, knowing the importance behind this work. Something brand new that we are very excited to share with you this year is that to support the implementation of the survey requirements for this year, we want to maximize that participation and optimize our data quality, ultimately contributing to the success of the Indicator 14 survey initiative. And so conducting surveys and data collection, we know, is time consuming, resource intensive for districts. And so as we move from a sampling to a census model, districts are going to be required to submit this work annually. And so that increase of number of students that you all are having to contact, we certainly understand that, again, that is time consuming for you all. And so this year, TDOE is introducing a stipend incentive for each completed survey submitted by your district. For every survey completed, so you've made contact with the student, you've logged it, not an attempt, but a completed survey, your district will receive $20 per student. So non-administrative staff members, such as your special education teachers, paraprofessionals, transition staff, clerical staff who are trained to conduct this work are eligible for stipends. Staff members that are working on the survey are going to do so outside of contract hours, and they have to adhere to all relevant state and local board policies regarding compensation. All districts are going to have the opportunity to receive stipends for participation, and you're going to be able to identify your desire to opt in or out, whether you would like to do this. So if you are interested and want to receive this $20 for every student completed survey, which you're doing the work anyway, so hopefully that this will help out with the manpower behind it. You will have a couple of things that we've got to get finished and completed in a pretty quick turnaround. And so we're going to drop in the chat right now an indicator stipend form, or Indicator 14 stipend form, again, on that tight deadline before this survey opens. And so this form is essential for making sure that if you are wanting to participate and say, yes, my district wants to opt in, we need to know this so that we can set up allocations in ePlan. So we're going to drop that link in the chat. Then once you have completed that survey, additional information about fulfilling the application process in ePlan will be sent. If your district opts in, that will include next steps of what you need to do. This step is necessary to validate your district's eligibility for the stipend. Everything has been finalized in Edison. We are ready to go on that end. We are simply just waiting on you all to tell us, yes, we would like to opt in, or no, thank you. We're going to opt out. And so once we have that, we can then set on our application process your allocations to be built in that will show you how many assigned students you have, which you'll also have that list, and how much money you potentially would be able to have available if every student was a successful completion. But again, even if not every student is a successful completion, you're still going to get credit for those students who did complete the survey and that you have logged. And that's why it's so important to not only have that documentation, of course, entered into the survey, but more importantly, like having that contact log and being able to track that information is going to be very helpful for that. All of the required documentation, including the completed forms and any supporting materials, will be submitted. This is a hard deadline by October 1st, 2024 to be eligible for this stipend. So just want to clarify that though. The link that was dropped in the chat, you need to tell us by Friday, May 10th, if you're opting in or out, because the survey is scheduled to open on May 15th. Then from that, once you tell us if you're opting in, we're going to set allocations for your district. You will go into ePlan. And while I say application process, please know, really, I have designed this where it's not additional work for you all. It is, you all are very familiar with ePlan, but there will be a couple of items you just have to check off that, hey, at the end of this process, I'm going to have to submit my Indicator 14 contact log. Again, it's something you're already doing. And then the additional step will be that you will submit timesheets for those individuals who were assigned to this work. And so after those things have been done by October 1st, they would all have to be submitted in there. Then the money would be available moving forward for your district. And so it looks like that link is there. I am sure, because that is brand new, that we are going to receive a lot of questions about this. And so here in just a second, we're going to open it up for questions. You can drop those in the chat. If you feel like you need to come off mic to better explain, please just let us know in the chat and we can make sure that setting is available for you. Again, I know this is a lot of information, a lot of familiar information for you completing the survey, but there are additional components, and we know that there is an increase of students that you are surveying this year. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us at the very end of this conclusion of the presentation. We're going to share our contact information, but feel free to drop some questions in the chat, and we as a team will tag team and get all of those addressed for you today.
I'll start, okay, to answer a few of those questions. All right, Catherine? So to answer, I'm just going to try to go in the line of how they go, okay? So Cynthia asked if we log in dropped out students. Yes, because they've exited a year ago. So they left school a year ago. So these are students who have dropped out, maybe aged out, graduated with a regular education diploma, graduated with a special education diploma, an alternative diploma, that whole list. So these are students that have exited out a year ago. But that leads me into Lenny's question. What if they re-enrolled in school? Yes. So they would answer yes to question 1, which automatically ends your survey. And that means that student will be removed from your student denominator list because they're not exited out for a year. They've re-enrolled, which is amazing for them. So that student's name needs to come off your denominator list. So when we were talking about snail mail, mailing those out to students, the paper survey, make sure you put the unique ID on the paper survey. So when it mails back to you, you know who that survey is attached to with their student. We unfortunately had a school district a few years ago had a great response rate with mailed return surveys, but they didn't know who they were for because they didn't have their unique ID listed on those paper surveys. So they can use them. So Angelina asked if you can contact other maybe family members or teachers and things like that if you can't get in touch with the student. In the past, yes, that has been acceptable from the Department of Education to maybe if they had that teacher for 4 years, that teacher can answer questions about that student. You won't be able to answer all the questions, which is fine because sometimes you can't answer all the questions. But the survey is not meant to stop if you don't answer all the questions. And you should be able to. So yes, you can contact teachers or other family members, maybe the parents or something like that, if you get a hold of them instead. Or if they have a sibling still at high school that can answer those questions about that student, if you're having trouble maybe reaching them. I think that's all the things I wrote down from questions so far. I'm sure there's some that keep coming in. I'll stop.
No, thank you, Rachel. That was very helpful. I'm trying to catch up myself. You were doing such a wonderful job tackling all those.
I will just share some other questions we've received, not today, but since we sent out that April 15th survey. If a student has passed away and you know that, you do not need to contact the family. Again, we're not trying to bother families, so you can note that in the log or just send Vanderbilt or ETSU an email to let us know that situation. And like Rachel mentioned with students who re-enroll, we'll just kind of remove them from the denominator so we don't have to worry about them. And questions we've received about families or students who speak languages other than English. So at this time, it is each LEA's responsibility to deal with that accordingly, meaning you can hire a translator or interpreter within your district to do that survey administration. But the problem is, even if we had the paper copies in another language, the reality is then they would get answered in another language. And when they're sent back to you, if you don't know Vietnamese, for example, it doesn't provide you much support. You would still have to hire someone to help you to understand the responses. So if you need that, please do that. Of course, we want to meet the needs of our students and our families. And it shouldn't be too common because, again, we are trying to reach students. But if that is the case, then it's the district's responsibility to manage that.
Some of the questions regarding the stipend, so we'll just knock those out. Question was, is there somewhere that goes over the requirements for the stipend? We are going to talk a little bit more about this on the director call next week. So I know that I'm also in the process of drafting a letter that will be sent to superintendents as well as all of our special education directors, because we know this is brand new. You have lots of questions. We are just grateful that we've been able to get this turned around in a really quick time frame. So we will make sure, hopefully, to get you some more additional requirements. If you clicked the link to be able to opt in or out, there is additional context provided in that. So hopefully that answered some of your questions, but we are developing additional information and guidance over that will be shared next week on the SPED call. Someone asked can these surveys be completed during school hours? Certainly they can be completed during school hours. However, the stipend you may not receive the stipend unless it is outside of that individual's contract hours, because we're really trying to recognize that this is time-consuming work that is taking potentially people away from their other duties. And so that's what we really designed the stipend to show, that we want to give you the resources to be able to allocate those funds to those individuals who are having to do stuff outside of their scope or after hours to reach those individuals. So those would need to be outside of contract hours. Sorry, continuing to skim through and just making sure. Melissa, who is with Rachel at East Tennessee State University. Melissa, did you drop your contact information? Did you get your?
She doesn't have it yet.
Okay, Perfect.
It's coming.
Rachel, do you want us to add yours to that too?
Yes, you can add that. Most districts that already have been with me know Tossie R at ETSU. You're more than welcome to email me. Melissa will have her email address and everything in the next few days. IT is still working on getting her squared away.
Fantastic. And please know that Rachel, many of you are familiar with, and we are so grateful for her work over many, many years on this, just the indicator, setting up everything. She has been a wealth of knowledge and a huge resource. And so Rachel is still helping us out, but she's also kind of stepped into other adventures at ETSU too. But I'm sure that if you email Rachel, she will graciously answer or point you in the right direction. But we will get that updated contact information on Melissa as soon as possible to you as well, so that we're not bothering Rachel all the time. But we are so grateful for her work and expertise in this area.
Also too, I think somebody, I can't remember who, where did it go? Ask if you need to, does it feel like you're double entering attempted contacts? In years past, for me at ETSU, I was okay with you just putting it on the contact log. This year is different. The Department of Education would like for you to put it on that red cap link contact. And in addition to using that Excel contact, they're going to two separate places. They're for two separate reporting things. So yes, it does feel like you're double entering, and we know that, and we're sorry. We just got, that's what we're gonna have to do until we can figure out something else to make sure we've got everything squared away. So yes, it does feel like you're double entering. Sorry.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. And really, that is as we move into next year and looking at the survey and maybe refining it a little bit. This is just very helpful information for us to have in numerous capacities that we can gather that data from to see, hey, what is working statewide, what is not, or what are other options that we really need to consider to be able to do this effectively and efficiently on an annual basis, with moving again from that sampling to a census of additional students. So
Catherine,
apologies for the duplication, but
Catherine, is there a required response rate percentage like there has been in past years for the districts? Do they need to have a certain number of return survey responses?
Well, 100% would be fantastic. But we are encouraging districts to have that 75% response rate. Like I said, 100% would be great, and you're getting paid for the work. So what more could you ask for, right? But we also certainly know that there are certain students that, despite I know contacting them in numerous ways, they cannot be tracked down. Maybe they have other circumstances that you're not able to reach them. And so obviously we're going to take that into consideration too. But 75% is our goal, but I would love to see every student contacted.
So one of the questions was, the red cap form does not clarify info on the kind of attempt. Reason being, that's why you have to do the Excel contact log as well. Red cap just says, did you attempt to contact that student? Your Excel contact has a little bit more. It's even got a little space for comments. You know, like unfortunately, Hillary mentioned, you know, students may have unfortunately passed away or things like that. That would be where you want to comment that out, or just send a direct email to one of us. Because it doesn't, red cap doesn't really allow for that at the moment, since we've got two separate ways going. Yeah. And don't forget, you can contact family members and previous teachers to try to get that 100% that Catherine's looking for.
And also I would, and again, my background was, many of you know this by now, was in work-based learning. So I was in the community all the time, but really tap into those resources that you have in your own building. Especially as the school year winds down. I know that you all probably go to the grocery store. You might go to doctor's offices, you know, various places that you're constantly seeing students. So that's why I always say too, like, have that paper copy on hand, because you never know who you might run into, or their parent or their family member,
right,
to capture that, and really just encourage your designated team members to do the same. Because often we see those familiar faces. And so any opportunity we can get to capture that, I know, is certainly helpful.
I know those Friday night football games at the very beginning of school seem to really have a lot of students come back. Dr. Reeds had said, do we need to place snail mail and email attempts in the electronic survey? I would say no on snail mail for ETSU, but email attempts, if you want to count that as one of your 3 attempts, go ahead. I mean, that would really, help you out if you log those on your Excel spreadsheet for, snail mail is 1, email attempts 2, and then phone calls 3. You really, really tried to find that student, in my opinion. So yeah. Yes. So the question is, if the first 2 attempts are unsuccessful and the 3rd attempt is successful, do we need to log all 3 attempts in REDCap, or just the successful one and document the non-successful attempts on a spreadsheet? So you would have probably already logged those 2 unsuccessful attempts in REDCap on your Excel spreadsheet. You would have already logged those 2, and then your 3rd successful one would be your survey entry. So you probably would have already done that on your Excel and your REDCap. Yeah. Yes. These are great questions.
Misty, this was higher up. So she had asked if we have to have the form completed by the 10th, will we have the info prior to that?
Can you explain more about the information in terms of your allocations? Is that what she's referring to?
She said the stipend form.
Yes. So the stipend form is what she's filled out to either opt in or opt out. And so that's by the 10th. And then the additional information will all be built out into ePlan, except for what we share on the call, which is going to be more so, hey, the steps, like let's go into ePlan and make sure that your allocations match the number of students that you've been assigned on your sheet, and filling out, accepting the assurances, things of that, making a budget line for, you're going to have maybe 1 staff doing all the work. Maybe you're going to have 4 staff, whatever that may be, to break that down. And then at the end of that survey administration, you would then upload that contact log as well as the timesheets to support documentation of those individuals who had been assigned to this work. Does that help clarify? And I know it's a very quick turnaround. Like I said, we've just really been working hard with our procurement team to make sure that this was an opportunity for you all. And so I apologize if the communication has been a little bit delayed. We were just trying to get everything squared away so that we could communicate that with you today on this call. But ePlan is still being built out. The money's going to be there. I can promise you that for every successful completion, we just have to make sure those allocations are set. And so we're trying to do that from the 10th to the 15th, which is a really quick turnaround for all districts.
To answer Rod, hey Rod, how are you? To answer the questions, can you enter all the REDCap entries at one time from the Excel spreadsheet? That's up to you. You do what's best for you and your district. So yes, if you've maybe had them all on paper and on Tuesday you have a long time, sure, just that's fine with me if you enter them all at once. Just make sure you hit your deadlines and give yourself plenty of time in case something happens. So yes.
Another question came in, is there a final due date that all survey information needs to be completed? All surveys need to be in REDCap by September 15th, 2024. So survey is going to open May 15th and it's going to close September 15th. I've received a lot of questions with the number of students, the increase there for many of our districts. Hey, can we extend this? Unfortunately, that is dictated by OSEP. That is not something that the universities or the Department of Education have leverage with. And so that is, again, set by OSEP for reporting for the dates. So everything needs to be logged in by September 30th. Or September 15th, I'm sorry. But however, if you have your ePlan stuff, you need to go back in those documents. They will need to be submitted by October 1st. I would encourage you, just in case there was anything that needed to be corrected, when submitting the timesheets and the contact log, I would encourage you to get those in as soon as possible. As soon as that work is done, go ahead and just drop those in, just so you don't have to worry about it, because that October 1st, 2024 deadline is a hard deadline. And so I want to make sure that you all are able to have access to those funds. Yeah, the stipend form is just like, that's due May 10th. Another question just came in about that. That is just saying, here's my district, here's my name, I'm opting in or I'm opting out. I'll clarify this too. If you tell me you're opting in and you change your mind, that's fine. You're just gonna you're gonna put a 0 in for your budget once you see that allocation and e-plan. So if you change your mind, that is fine. However, if you say no and change your mind and it's after the 10th, that's where it gets a little bit sticky. And that is where, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to make any changes after May 10th. So again, I would encourage you, if you're like, I'm interested in this, we're doing the work anyway, go ahead and opt in. We want to make sure that you're getting those resources through funding. But the form that just says opting in or out, that is what is due May 10th. Your timesheets and your contact log, that's not going to be due until the very end because you can't submit those because the survey won't even open until the 15th. However, once your allocations, that will show how much your district is going to be eligible for, and that's going to be different for every district because some districts may have 100 kids they're surveying, some districts have 500 they're surveying. So those allocations that are going to show, hey, you have this amount available and this many students, that's going to look different. And so you'll just have to go in to confirm those. And then, of course, at the very end, on the tail end, that's when you'll submit your documentation of the timesheets and the completed contact log. The form has been dropped into the chat. If you're referring to the form, we can drop that in the chat again too. Because I know that there's been lots of questions in here, all great questions. So if you've maybe missed that part, we will drop that in the chat so that you can go ahead. I'm already getting notifications that I would say 60 of you all have already done that. So that's awesome. Thank you for getting that in. Greatly appreciate it. We don't want you to forget about it before the 10th. But again, we'll also give a reminder on that SPED director call next week as well.
Leslie asked, what about students who are deaf or hard of hearing?
If the question is about how to get information from them, it kind of depends on the student. So if they use sign language, then they may have a video relay system in their home that would allow you to call their home, and there is someone that would interpret essentially. If it's a student who is able to read at the 4th grade reading level or higher and can answer the survey through email, you can do it through email. Similarly, through the snail mail option. So we still want to include those students, of course. It just depends on the student's needs. But in the same way as our students, if this is a student who has higher support needs beyond just hearing loss, that might be an opportunity where it is more appropriate to ask the family, but we do want to ask the student first if they are able to communicate on their own behalf.
I just wanted to let you all know as well, we are going to, we have recorded this session. So if you've had to come in and out today, this morning, or if you're like, I need to rehear that or look at some of those things, we are going to be sending that and sharing that with you all as well. So if you need a copy of the presentation again or things like that, you'll receive a recording from today's session. And please, if there's anyone who has asked a question and the team has skipped over that accidentally, if you want to retype that in the chat, I just want to make sure before we all hop off this morning that we have addressed all of your questions because these have been excellent questions. So we are happy to provide clarification and point you in the right direction. I just don't want anyone's question to not be addressed.
Meredith asks, I have students on my list that withdrew before they graduated with their cohort. How do I handle this?
So those students have exited a year ago, correct?
I think she hasn't responded yet, but I'll just add to Rachel's. If they're on your student list, then it is assumed they have been gone for 1 year. We at Vanderbilt and ETSU are not coming up with that list. That is pulled from the IDEA data person or people at TDOE. So that list, again, in cases where a student may have passed away, that wouldn't be in the log. So that's why you would need to communicate that. But if a student has exited school, that is in their student file. And so that is why their data is pulled. And then, yes, you are responsible for finding them, even if they're not in the same cohort. Maybe they dropped out in 10th grade and the traditional cohort is leaving at 12th grade. That is okay. You're still responsible for every student on that list.
Yes, thank you.
And if you come across any student, Meredith, that looks like you said they were not in that cohort, if you come across any student who you were like, hey, they're actually a senior this year, and there has been a mistake from that data pull, please send that directly to myself, or you can send that to your university. We will make sure that we have our data team look into that because we want those to be accurate. But again, I'm not anticipating a lot of those, but mistakes definitely happen. So please send us those if there's a concern of that student was not with that cohort. Larry has asked when the recording is going to be available. I'm going to try to get that to you as soon as possible. And so I will work with our team to see how we want to communicate that to you all, whether that is through attaching it to the director information that is sent out as a post follow-up next week, or it might be something that we'll go ahead and release. But with the time crunch, I will definitely be advocating for getting that into your hands as soon as possible, because we certainly understand many of you have had to pop in and out today with other obligations. So Larry, I will make sure that we can get that to you as quickly as possible.
There was one other question about the paper copy of this survey. The link that we dropped earlier were the instructions. And then the question was, I know you probably said this, but where is that paper copy of the survey?
So I apologize. It may be that the link that Michael created for us was the wrong one. That's okay. The paper copy you should have received as an attachment in the email from your participating university on April 15th. If you cannot find that email, go ahead and just shoot Rachel's team or our team an email and we'll get that right back to you. But it is an attachment as part of that April 15th email. So check there. If you can't find it, just let us know.
Hi, Tricia, just saw your question. Apologies for the Central Eastern mix up there. Definitely, we will make sure that you receive this recording today. As I told Larry just a second ago, we're going to get that as quickly as possible to you, but we will make sure that you have that information. In the meantime, if you have any questions following the recording or parts that you just need additional clarification, please reach out to either ETSU, Vanderbilt, or myself, and we will make sure to address those things.
And just following up on Amanda, she makes a good point. The email on April 15th went out to directors. So if you are the Indicator 14 person within your district, we had asked directors to send that information along, but they may not have. And we didn't get everybody's contact information for us to send that. We had tried, but things happen. So feel free to ask your director for a copy of that email. But yes, Amanda, I see you've put your email here, and Tara or AJ can grab that and we'll send you a paper copy.
When you say directors, you're talking about special ed directors in the district, not directors of schools.
Yes, thank you for the clarification.
And for additional clarifications for your directors of schools, we are, I've talked to Dr. Jennifer Jordan, and we are going to be communicating this available stipend to your superintendent or your director of school. And so they should be very familiar with this too. And then you'll get additional information about that next week in the call. But if they come to you asking about it, it's because we're just making sure that is communicated as much as possible to cover as many people that they're able to get that information and act upon it. All right, well, last chance for any questions you may have. You all have been an excellent group, so we really appreciate your engagement. We appreciate your questions.